Juraj Kralik is back. I'm going to ask him why he does not like Esa Lindell. Who has stood out to him throughout camp, and do we feel any better about the D pairings heading into next season? That's all next on Locked On Stars.
You're Locked On Stars, your daily podcast on the Dallas Stars. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Howdy, Stars fans. I'm Joey Erickson, former producer 105 Through the Fan. Please be sure to subscribe. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. And as always, thank you so much for making us a part of your day and making us your first listen. Welcome back to the show. Juraj Kralik is back on Locked On Stars. Good to see you, my friend. It has been a few months, I believe, right after July 1st, free agency. So how are you, my friend? Welcome back to the show. Always good to catch up with you.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. The summer just went by. Enjoyed the summer, enjoyed the coming of the fall, and now, looking forward for hockey to start. Right, it's October already, so who's not happy about it?
Absolutely. I can't wait to dive into a little bit of everything. We have so much we can catch up on. So I'm excited to get your thoughts on the Esa Lindell extension, Thomas Harley, even the little bridge deal he signed over the summer. So much I'm sure you have opinions and thoughts on. So we're going to dive in to all of it today. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. So we'll start here right after July 1st. And both of us, I would say, were not thrilled with the acquisitions of Matt Dumba and Ilya Lyubushkin because we had expectations of some of those bigger names out there. But as the months have gone on, I have started to feel a bit better about these D pairings heading into next season. So I'm curious if there is any truth to that for you. Do you feel a bit better about where the Stars are situated right now on day one than possibly where they were at on day one heading into last season?
Yes, and yes to both of your questions, to put it shortly. And the reason why, it kind of grew up on me a little bit. Not to mention the fact that Miro Heiskanen could start the season on his left side, which is his strong side, which could elevate the level of the D pairings, which has been, I think it's better than last year. And then that's with something that everybody agrees on, right? Around the Stars universe, like everybody says it's better than it was at the start of the last season, but it's worse than it has been in playoffs. So we are kind of like in between, but that's fine because you don't win Stanley Cup in October or in November. So totally fine. I was watching Moneyball for the upteenth time.
Yes.
One of the long flights I had this summer. I think it was coming back from my holiday. And the notion of the Moneyball was the replacing Jason Giambi, right?
Yeah.
And I believe Stars may have done something like that. They tried to replace Chris Tanev by 2, possibly 3 guys because if we move Miro from the right to left, that elevates the group itself. So then you're just filling up the blanks. And if you have a strong left side, you can live with a little bit weaker, or should I say a lot weaker right side. And this is how Tampa won its cups, right? So there is a way, I would say, blueprint for that. Let's just see how it works in real games. And not to be mistaken, I still expect them to add somebody at the trade deadline, as they probably will be in position too. So that's gonna change, and maybe the addition will be Lian Bichsel or Bichsel, should I say right now?
Yeah, whatever it is.
Yeah, I know that's a big talking point as well. So we'll wait and see. But overall, positive feelings, and honestly, it's sports. Robert Tiffin had this great thought that really resembled something in me. Nothing is more important and still also least important than sports and sports writing. So maybe they start season 05 and we are all bitter and angry. They start 5-0 the season and we are all happy and already parading. So that really can change in 1 or 2 weeks.
Yeah, look, it's something we're going to be debating till April. We really are about this back end because, frankly, it's the only thing many Stars fans have concerns about. And I continue to beat this dead horse over the last few seasons is what is the D pairings going to look like? How is the D going to fare when it comes to the postseason and all of this? It's just it's the hot button issue with the Dallas Stars because they are so solid up front. And when you look at it from a bird's eye view, you have to feel pretty good about, well, you have Miro Heiskanen and Thomas Harley, who are your two best defensemen. And I think Harley's going to eventually elevate his game where he's in the upper echelon, like top 25 defenseman in the NHL. And you're like, well, you can kind of throw anybody with them and you're going to feel pretty decent about what you have because Miro can make up for any weaknesses Dumba has. And Harley should be able to cover up for any weaknesses Lyubushkin have. And I've said too, we're going to have to live with some of those mistakes from Dumba and Lyubushkin. Those are going to happen. There are going to be issues throughout the season, but Dumba can pair and complement Miro's game, it looks like. And as you mentioned, I think it opens up so much with Miro on his strong side. It's going to open so much offensively for him and others, and probably more importantly, defensively. It makes it so much easier when you can just make one pass on your forehand and get out of the zone instead of having to be on your backhand. And it takes that extra second, right? And that extra second is everything in the NHL because the game is played so fast. And you speak and you alluded to Bichsel. I'm going with Bichsel because that's what Josh Bogorod said. I'm going with the play-by-play guy. But man, he looks really good. He looks really good. And I would say, I think the foundation of his game is already there. Yes, he may need a season in the AHL. Maybe he just needs 3 months. And as the preseason wears on, he still looks comfortable. He's just so calm. And you talked about Tampa Bay. He gives me Victor Hedman vibes. And I'm not saying that's going to be him, but he's just so big and he can still move. I really love the player now that we get to watch him more consistently. What have you made of him in the preseason? Is this something that you've noticed for a while now? Is this something that maybe this is just kind of his style of game and now we get to see it more in front of our own eyes consistently?
Yeah, I mean, okay, I'll go with Bichsel as well, like officially, because that's what he wanted to go announcers with. But it's the same reason I would go probably with Zdeno Chara, even though I know it's incorrect. I know Lian Bichsel is factually incorrect. And I think Sean Shapiro said this very much the same. Like, it's, I would say, the hockey players like giving in, and the young hockey players even more so, like, okay, you name it whichever way you prefer. Just leave side note, Lian Bichsel, the last time I'll use this version, comes from Alton, Switzerland, which is very, very strongly populated part of Switzerland by German-speaking people. And around 85 or 90%. The rest is Italian and Albanian. That doesn't really matter. The German pronunciation of his name, which erodes from the birthplace, Alton, is Lian Bichsel. So this is like the original, how the original sound should be. But I totally respect he plays in America, so announcers will call it Bichsel, and I'm gonna do the same. I just leave a side note. The same reason Zdeno Chara is the right pronunciation in Slovak, as I'm Slovak myself. But for many years it has been Zdeno Chara. Like Ladislav Nať is the right pronunciation of Ladislav Nagy in America. So these are like, this is just something I wanted to get my chest out. Like, you know, this is something that has been bothering me for a week or so. So I'm gonna go with Lian Bichsel, and I have a like spin around question for you, Joey. Okay. Let's say Lian Bichsel replaces Nils Lundqvist as the 6th defenseman. Yeah. Are you still adding D at trade deadline or not? And if so, why? That you have Heiskanen and Dumba, Harley and Lyubushkin and Lindell and Bichsel, sorry, it's still very hard for me to get no. Are you still adding to this decor or not?
Man, that's such a good question because I've kind of thrown that out there as the the best case scenario for Dallas is Bichsel comes up and is like an everyday NHL defenseman for you. I think that's the best case scenario. And off the top of my head,
let's assume he is. Let's just assume that he's like the Harley 2.0.
Okay.
So he's not like complete, but he's right up there, and he will be like better option than Lundqvist will be as the sixth place defenseman, or maybe it's the third pairing.
My gut feeling is you don't add anybody. That would be my gut feeling, because I feel really, really strongly about his game. My gut feeling is you wouldn't have to add anybody, because if he is Harley 2.0, that means DeBoer trusts him in all situations. And I think you can hang on to some of your assets, and maybe you look other places in your roster, depending on injuries or something at that point to add, even though the Stars don't have many holes up front. You can always use an extra forward. You can, and maybe you add a depth defenseman, but you're not going out to sign a Tanev, is what I'll say. But that's a fantastic question. I'm curious, what would your answer be on that? Because
my answer would be, honestly, I'm adding. Even still, if Lian Bichsel is coming up, I'm adding, and I also give the explanation why I'm adding. The reasons the Stars didn't win Stanley Cup last season was because their lack of depth on D. So let's say Lian Bichsel comes up and is like perfectly capable of playing even second pairing. Let's say he plays second pairing with Thomas Harley.
More than 5 minutes.
Yeah. So then you have Bichsel with Lindell or with Harley. Really depends. And basically your top six is set, right? But I still believe in adding a player like, let's say, Connor Murphy from Chicago, right-handed, rugged D that can play on the right side, is dependable, very much dependable, has good impact numbers, which pushes down, I would say, possibly Ilya Lyubushkin as your seventh guy on the depth chart. So when you go into the playoffs, you have Ilya Lyubushkin as a possible replacement for injury of anybody, which is a better option than if you had Nils Lundqvist or somebody like Lundqvist, if DeBoer still doesn't trust him and if he doesn't, I would say, rose to the occasion yet. So my ideal trade would be centered around a guy like Connor Murphy, where possibly Nils Lundqvist would be the candidate going out from Dallas. So this is like my thinking ahead, what could happen. And if you go to playoffs with D-core consisted of Miro Heiskanen, Thomas Harley, Esa Lindell, Connor Murphy, Matt Dumba, and Lian Bichsel with Lyubushkin as your 7D, that's your strength. That's not a weak link anymore. So it's like my thinking about it. So that's what I wanted to share, and also see what your opinion would be. Yeah. And also maybe let the listeners think from themselves as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Let us know in the comment section below. It's a fantastic question, because I think we still have reservations about Dumba and Lyubushkin being in your top four, right? Serving in the top four, because those are big minutes that they're going to have to eat. And if Bichsel comes up and he can serve second pairing minutes, as you mentioned, just kind of move you one spot down the depth chart, then you feel really, really good about the strength. And you can never have too many bodies, especially on the back end. It's always good to have depth defensemen. So that would be an intriguing take. And it feels like we're going to have another year of this Nils Lundqvist dilemma. I look forward to having 8 episodes on that this season with Nils.
And Ilya Lyubushkin is like not the best, I would say, cost to value option as your 7D, as he makes 3.25 million. But in playoffs, it doesn't really matter, right? So if you can chalk that up like under the cap, I think you could, because Connor Murphy makes 4.4. Let's say Chicago retains half, that's 2.2 million for Connor Murphy, and he's signed for the next season as well. So you will have Connor Murphy for 2 seasons, not just one. So he wouldn't be like pure rental option either. So I mean, that's an enticing option like to think about. And also like Lyubushkin is also known for injuries. I just might want to like put it out there, because I followed him closely in Toronto. He played very good with what was his name, Morgan Riley. And but he was also injured because of the style of play he has. So Lyubushkin might be injured and might play, I would say, maybe around 65 games more or less. So there is still like this. Okay, who then replaces Ilya Lyubushkin? And internally, long term, I believe Stars already have their new Nils Lundqvist in Christian Kairu in their system. So
Okay,
that's why I believe they can replace Lundqvist, even though if they give up on him. So I'm totally fine with getting rid of Lundqvist if they get something valuable back.
Absolutely. Great stuff. Okay, let's keep it on the defensive side of the puck since there's just so much to get into. Lindell and Harley extensions. We'll get into that here in just a moment. Today's episode of Locked On Stars is brought to you by FanDuel. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get that hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. And you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. When you're on the couch this Sunday watching all of the football games, get in on the action, make some money watching the Cowboys, and get to FanDuel. It's FanDuel.com. And as I just mentioned, you get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. You don't even have to win, so there's no excuses. Go to FanDuel, enjoy the action on a Sunday whenever you would like. In the middle of the game, towards the end, you get that feeling. Go ahead and drop some money on the game. Visit FanDuel.com. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. All righty, Uri. Why do you not like Esa Lindell? I saw the extension come out, and then you go on this fiery rampage on Twitter, and you're going at everybody. So what is it about the extension? No. I'm sure you like the player, but
simple answer, because I'm a hater at heart. So.
Yes.
No, I mean the same as with Stars defense. The contract kind of grew on me a little bit. Like I still hate the year 4, year 5 part because you have to remember, like Esa will be 31 when this contract just kicks in. So it's like 5 more years after that. So it's until he's 36.
Yes.
Just thinking about like how the cap is gonna rise. That was like my gut reaction was like, what? My God, like 5 years, really? Like I was expecting 3, 4 at best, but let's say, okay, he's signed for 5 years. That's reality. If he plays for the level that he has, I think it's good. For the next 3 years, or at least, or next 4 years, should I say? So this one and the next 3 after. The years 4 and 5, I hate, but it's gonna be, I would say, maybe a really small percentage of the cap at that point, and it's gonna be like tradable asset, or Stars are in position to either buy him out, as we saw with Ryan Suter, and also in position to possibly trade him and maybe retain some salary or something like that. But just to be clear, that's really just me and I would say my financial part of me, like planning like 5 years ahead for Stars. I'm sure they've done this well. And also it's not, I would say it's not, I would say, how do you say? Sorry, sometimes my English is failing me. It's not like an accident that they didn't put any clause in the contract for year 4 and year 5. So no trade, no nothing. Or maybe there's just there is some trade protection, but it's not full trade protection. And there is not any like movement clauses, so they can buy him out or anything. So it's good on this part. And for the player, you know what? I love Esa Lindell. Like he's gonna be stars for life. And maybe if they win 1, maybe 2 cups down the road, who knows? Like he'll be in that conversation of possibly having the number retired. Like I'm not saying it's going to happen. Like I'm 99% sure it won't, because like he's been Stars for life and he's going to be that kind of player. Now I also honestly like love this kind of players, like those players who just stay with one club throughout their entire career. So that's really what fascinates me. That's what I love about the sport, like the loyalty part, which kind of like erodes sometimes. So you know what, the Esa Lindell contract, it's let's say it's groomy. Thomas Harley, on the other hand, I could argue that Stars could have and should have probably done much better. Like, don't get me wrong, having Thomas Harley at $4 million is a great value for the next 2 years. So if they win a cup in the next 2 years, the investment was probably worth it, right? But Stars did the same mistake as Edmonton did with Evan Bouchard. Like they knew, and even though I would say Stars knew much more about Thomas Harley than Edmonton did with even Bouchard when Edmonton like bridged Bouchard. And Stars knew they have like this real deal on their hands, like with Thomas Harley. So honestly, I don't want to be like too harsh on Jim Nill because I'm sure he tried to sign Thomas Harley long term. Like who wouldn't? But if the agent said no and the number is this and this, let's say the number would be 8.5 or the same. Let's say the same contract that Miro Heiskanen signed. Like I would sign Thomas Harley to that contract in a heartbeat.
Yeah,
and probably even Jim Nill would, because all the steps that he did, like with buying out Suter, like with the like trading Fox away, like kind of like led me to it. Like, okay, he's gonna sign Harley long term, or maybe even at least try to. And if not, and bear with me on this, if not, like, okay, at least 3 or 4 years. So lock up his RFA years and possibly link Thomas Harley's RFA years to somebody else's contract. Like, and 2 years, I'm just saying that it's not ideal. Like if I go on Puckpedia and I want to like see that which contracts are aligned with Thomas Harley, like when does he need an extension? It's going to be in the summer of 2026, which is the same summer where Jason Robertson is up for extension, and also Logan Stankoven is going to be up for extension.
Yeah.
So that was my thinking behind, like, and I did a projection, like I did a tweet about it. The cap's going to be around, I would say, 96, 97 million, something like that, given the projection of Gary Batman and given the 5% increase. So I would say it's going to be very, very tight. The one key wild card here is the new CBA, right? So there is a new CBA. I think it's going to be up in 2026. So exactly in the summer where this sort of signing is going to happen. And there is a talk about the cap cushion, right? The cap could possibly rise even more than 5% in the summer of 2026. And I'm not in discussions. I'm just interested in the business part of the NHL. Yeah. So I expect that to happen. It's just my educated guess. So if that let's say indeed happens and the cap rises from 92.5, which is going to be next season, to 105, let's say only, then it's totally fine.
Absolutely. There's so many contracts that have to be done too. Jim Nill's gonna get his money's worth over the next few summers. And just to clarify with Lindell, the first 3 years of that extension are no trade clause, and then 4 or 5 are that modified no trade clause. With Lindell, I have a few theories, but I guess my running theory right now was I was surprised by the timing of the extension, just because we were all expecting Harley. We were waiting for that to get done. So that kind of surprised me. But the extension doesn't, because as you mentioned, Lindell has been consistent and he's been reliable in Dallas for years now, in a position that Dallas necessarily hasn't had a lot of continuity with over the last 4 or 5 years on their back end. And I was also thinking, well, maybe if they don't think Bichsel is ready this year, or he's going to be ready after a year in the AHL, it gives Dallas some consistency on the back end with Lindell that he can kind of carry along with Bichsel for the first 3 or 4 years of Bichel's career in the NHL, where you have a veteran, like stay-at-home defenseman that can sort of be that veteran presence right on the back. And Miro's going to still be there, and then Harley. So you have this group that's already going to be around Bichsel, where it's like we've kind of seen up front with Sagan and Jamie Benn, and now you put in the Borks and the Stankovens of the world, and you have all these veterans that are so key, especially in the NHL, of helping guide these younger players and helping them learn how to be professionals, right? And play every day, even though they come in and they just already know what they're doing, it seems like at this point in time. But maybe that's sort of my theory, is like, well, it is 5 years. But as you mentioned, and I've had listeners comment too, well, it does give them the option to buy him out. That doesn't mean he's going to be here for 5 years. And we saw that with Suter. So there are some loopholes for Dallas to sort of get out of it. Harley's just, I think that was the cost of the business they've already done. And I think they kind of pigeonholed Harley into sort of that deal. And as you mentioned, I'm sure they tried to get him long term, and maybe the numbers just didn't meet up. But as you mentioned, I mean, Miro's deal is a steal at this point in time. And if you got Harley to sign at that number, you'd be thrilled. You'd be absolutely thrilled. But I think I subscribe to the fact, man, you get him like, if you can get him for 8 years, 6 to 8 years, just get him done. And maybe that brings us into Jake Oettinger as well. I would love to get your thoughts on that. I subscribe. You just get him done long term, but there are some contracts out there that have to get done. Swayman, we're still waiting on that, and that's turned into a giant mess in Boston. But what are your thoughts on Oettinger? I think he's going to have a huge year. Contract years, players usually find a way to play really well. So I think Jake. I think you just give him 8 years and you just don't worry about it, because number one, netminders are huge, and I think he's the real deal. So where do you land on
I mean, I would say the archetype of contracts and also the timing of the signing is really like the proof is in the pudding. Like for example, with Esa Lindell, he also signed his like this contract that he currently has a year before. So there was like this notion of, okay, this didn't surprise me at all because it already happened before. With Jake is very much the guy that likes to bet on himself. So that's where I'm not like too sure that he would be only eager to sign for 8 years, because I can see Jake Oettinger saying, listen, I signed for 2 years, so maybe 3 years. I'm going to do the Austin Matthews. I signed for 4 years at 8 million. And then when the cap is like, let's say 105 million, 110 million, then I'm going to cash in. Like that's also thinking. That's why I'm of the opinion that, you definitely should try to sign Jake Oettinger long term. Like definitely something like 8.8 is viable, even though like the projections on the market are even lower. Like it's like 5 years at 6.7 million. So this was like projection from AFP Analytics, which I really respect their work, and they are obviously sometimes not like perfect, but they are very close to reality in their projections. So having Oettinger at 5 years for 6.5 will be great. But I just think okay, again, so thinking long term, 8.8 would be like the ideal contract. The Jeremy Swayman negotiation could really sway all these markets like in a totally different direction, if you don't mind my pun.
No worries.
And Igor Shesterkin as well. So let's say Igor Shesterkin signs for 12 million, 8 years, then Jake Oettinger is suddenly in the 10 million, I would say, area. Jeremy Swayman wants to have at least 8.5 or maybe 8.75 if I like catch that properly. And he also wants to reset the market. And if Swayman has 8.75, maybe even 9 million to his name, Jake Oettinger is a better goaltender than Jeremy Swayman, and he's more proven goaltender than Jeremy Swayman. So that's why I expect Jake Oettinger to be paid. And the question is like, okay, so for how long? I'm of the opinion like this is like the fascinating stuff. So we can go either way. It could be fine either way. It just really depends on the way we get there. Like if we sign Jake for the next 3 years again, like we do the short term again, like as I mentioned, the Austin Matthews thing, it's gonna be fine. But it's not gonna be like maximizing your, I would say, savings, because the player's role is to maximize your value and your earning. And for Jim Neal, his role is to, I would say, maximize the value out of the contract. So this is like the fascinating stuff in the negotiations. I fully expect Jake to sign something sensible, like let's say it's even 6 years or 5 years. So that will lead him into his 30s where he can still cash in, or 4 years will be fine as well. Anything less than 4 years would be really bad, and I don't expect that to happen. So anything from 4 years to 8 years would be great, because the value is going to just go up and up and up, depending on the number of years. And then you really have to consider the Wyatt Johnston extension. You really have to consider the Logan Stankoven extension as well. You mentioned Mavericks Borg. So it's going to be fascinating, but it's a good problem to have, because some team, they can't even like really ice the NHL roster. And now we are just talking about how many millions of dollars should this star get. So it's going to be fine, I'm sure.
Yeah, I guess it's a good problem to have. As long as you don't go Toronto's route and just give everybody like $12 million or whatever it was to like three guys, then they should be fine. But I don't think Jim
I mean,
Nils is going to do
nobody
that.
was screwed more by the COVID than Toronto was, right? Because they
Yes.
signed all these extensions right before COVID hit. So I feel for Kyle Dubas in this. He tried to be pioneer in some sort of way, and I respect him for that. And but it's also true to say that he lost. At least he lost the Marner negotiation, definitely. When you have the comparables of Mikko Rantanen and guys like that, he definitely lost that one. And they also lost the season of William Nylander as well. So yeah, overall, not a good feeling about it.
Yeah, and if you don't get the postseason success on top of that, man, that is really tough. And at least here in Dallas, we can say, well, we've won a few series over the last few seasons. We haven't got over the hump. We haven't reached the ultimate goal, but they've
Yeah.
been pretty decent in the postseason under Pete DeBoer. Okay, on the other side, let's jump into Pete DeBoer a bit. Let's talk about Jamie Benn even in the final year of his contract. What is Juraj most looking forward to this season? And some more, and we'll do that in just a moment. Okay, as we enter the final segment of today's episode of Locked On Stars, please hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, never miss an episode, drop a like as well. Always great to have your eye on. It's been a fun week too. We've had a few guests, which is always a good time. And man, every time me and Juraj talk, we go like an hour, which is great. And I hope the listeners love it as well. It's great to have different opinions instead of me just rambling every day for 30 minutes. I like to bring people on like Juraj that differ on some things. Sometimes we align and we can hash it out. What are you most looking forward to about the Dallas Stars this season? Anything that has caught your eye or you're really intrigued on for 2024-25? I know you're on the record. This is a Stanley Cup year. This is the year they get it done. So
This is it.
yeah, what do you I guess, but you can't use the Stanley Cup. What you're most looking forward to? It's got to be something else.
Well, yeah, like that goes without question, right? I
Yes.
said it 2 years ago.
Mhm.
I still stand by it. 2025 is the
Yes.
year where Stars win the Stanley Cup, and you can quote me on that because, and
Mhm.
also I think the previous elimination like helped them get to
Yeah.
this point. And what I really liked, like I like the mental approach. I really like the dynamics of the preseason that really they don't want to leave any stone unturned. Like they
Mhm.
come heavy, they come prepared. Like this is just straight to business. We go straight to business. We don't dwell on the last season. We go about, we win, and that's what we do here. Like that's
Yeah.
what I really like. I like the mentality.
Mhm.
Gone are the times of, I would say, the era of mediocrity, as Jim Montgomery said. Like
Yes.
I really respect this. Like I respect
Mhm.
this. I really respect this approach, which is not cocky, which is just really believe in yourself, in your
Mhm.
ability, and you're gonna go out and do it. So that's why I fully believe as well. Like I'm in definitely for Stars. Like when it comes to specifics, what I look for, well, looking forward to sleepless nights, and I'm sure I'm gonna have. I'm looking forward to Stars being in Europe for the first time, for example. Like, this
Yes.
is
Yeah.
something I really look forward to. Even though they're going to be in Finland, not in Prague, like the Devils are right now with Sabres, which is like for me, like really right behind the doorstep. And like it's going to be something new. But when it comes to the player personnel, the one player I have my eyes on is Maverick Bork. Like he's the
Uh-huh.
make or break kind of guy. From like if he has a very good season, and I believe he could have, the Stars are or could be on totally different level that they were last year, and it could even jump ahead of the problems that it might arisen on the D pairs, let's say with Dumba, Lyubushkin and whatnot. But Marek Borg, like he's the wild card for me because he could be the engine, let's say, of the third line with presumably Jamie Benn and
Mhm.
presumably Logan Stankoven, or possibly if you switch it up with even Wyatt Johnston, or he can drive a new line, or he can even be plugged into that first line of Jason Robertson and Robert Hintz. Well, Robert Hintz, of course. Like,
Yes.
what am I thinking about? And like what I like is the versatility of the interlinking capability of like switching up the guys, because
Yeah.
We always talk about like Jason Robertson is with Rope Hintz. So, but what if he's not? Like they can change it up. I'm looking forward for this, like really to how the Stars are gonna assert themselves as the top dog in the league. That's what I'm looking forward to.
Yeah.
I believe this expectation is warranted. And I believe we as a Stars fans have been waiting for so long for this kind of years to come where the Stars are the top dog. We've been talking about this for years now. Like we have the Stanko in the pipeline, Harley, Heiskanen, and you name the guys like Jason Robertson, Rope Hintz, Jake Oettinger. Now is the time. So now is I would say the time where Stars in a Cup era have the best team they could have. They have the deepest team they could have. I believe they have the biggest chance for championship in the DFW area from any team. So they could get really the fans behind as well. So just something like this, because really this is the years that we as a fan, we clamor for. Like we really want our team to be up there on and on and on. And that's what the Stars did. Like this is the year to cash in. And that's just something I'm really looking forward to.
Yeah, they're trying to put themselves in where Pittsburgh and Detroit were for over a decade, just consistently a top team that was constantly contending for a Stanley Cup. And yeah, they didn't get it done every year, but when you're in the top 3 or you're a top 2 team in your conference, it gives you a really good chance. You get a few breaks to go your way. You need some of those bounces in the postseason. Everybody gets a bit lucky on their way to a cup. And if you get some of those at the right time, sometimes the timing can all come together. And yeah, I think the expectation is, we're going to go out and win the Central. We're going to try to compete for a President's Cup trophy, right? We're going to try to establish ourselves as one of the best teams in hockey. And it is a fantastic feeling in Dallas to see this all come to fruition, because we all hope that Stankoven was going to hit, and Harley and Miro even. We all hope that was going to happen, but it really has. And Maverick Bourque is sort of that X factor now. It's like, man, did they do it again? Like, yeah, he dominated the AHL, but there's a step to this thing. Like, can he do it now in the NHL? And if he did, it's like that's another late first round pick that the Dallas Stars hit on, and then you have Bichsel in the pipeline as well that could come up, and you're just like, how do they keep doing this? And it's been a really impressive run.
Yeah, the only challenge for them right now is to become that Pittsburgh or that Detroit or that Tampa, and not San Jose.
You got to win some cups to do that. You got to win some cups to do that as well.
Like San Jose was in this very, very same situation in 2010s, and they didn't win a cup. They were right there. They just didn't win it. And for Stars, it's on them to become the Pittsburghs and the Detroit. And the good thing is, they have the capability and the ability to do so. It's now just to execute them. Yeah. And what you mentioned about the, let's say, the late picks, I mean, that's the song that we've all hear on, and now it's time to cash in, as I said, because I think Stars did again this year with Emil Hemming. Like the pick, the more I know about him, like I try to like follow closely their first round picks. That's why I wrote a deep dive on Lian Bichsel right after the draft. That's why I follow really closely Jason Robertson, even in his Kingston years, and then he was traded in the OHL. Rope Hintz, for example, was the other guy I followed really closely, and I believe Emil Hemming could be that next Rope Hintz, or let's say that next Jason Robertson. So let's wait 2-3 years for him. But you have the question right up there, like who has stood out in camp for me? Like apart from the obvious answers that I can mention, Artu Hiri or Huru. I can mention Oscar Back, who surprised, maybe not surprised, but he at least confirmed what we knew of him. I can mention Kola Lind was a surprise, but for me, who I liked him most was Emil Hemming. Like just the expectations was like he's 18-year-old. He's gonna go back to OHL where he's gonna be point per game guy, maybe even more. And he is also the next, I would say, the plug in the Dallas Stars offense, because you have to remember, like Matt Duchene is 35 or 33 or something like that, so he's not gonna be here forever. Jamie Benn, Tyler Seguin. So you still need to replace these guys. And with Emil Hemming, I believe they could have done this. So, or this could happen. So this, like, it's like say this, I would say, not the obvious choice for who has stood out in camp. But for me, maybe in 1 and 2 years, he's going to be like staple on the right wing. Let's say with Hintz, or let's say with somebody else. So with Wyatt Johnston. So that's very good pick right there. And just to finish my really long thought, I also like what Oscar Bach has done this preseason. And if I were to pick just one, like who's going to be that 13th forward, because that's where the discussion like goes. Like we have these 12 guys like pretty much penciled in, and also with these 7 guys on D, where we expect Bichsel to start season in AHL. To be honest, I expect Oscar Bach to be the 13th guy. So for the reasons we can go into, and maybe we'll see in a couple of hours, maybe a couple of days, but that's something that I expect them to do.
Yeah, I spoke with Steven Mazur of 100 Re Hockey the other week, and he mentioned Bach as a type of player that's sort of like Radek Faksa to me, and we're sort of defensive minded, good in the face-offs. He can PK for you, so that would be a perfect 13th forward for Pete DeBoer. I like Hiru's game. I think he's really good, and he gives Dallas maybe a bit more offensive punch than Bach. And I know Pete DeBoer does like his fourth lines to be able to score a bit, because you already have Blackwell, who's going to be kind of that more physical presence, and Sam Steele gives you some speed on that line. So it will be interesting who that 13th forward would be. And I say who stood out. There's just so many names too, like especially up front. There's just a lot of guys that I'm noticing. I'm like, okay, like Lynn can play
really good.
Yeah, like Hero, like okay, yeah, he's got some jump in his game. Matej Blumel, we sort of know what his game is like, and Bach. They've all sort of had good preseasons, so I think it is going to be a tough decision on opening night. But these guys are probably going to be moving up and down for the majority of the year, and that's okay. Like you prove yourself in the AHL, you get called up, and maybe you're healthy scratch a few nights, you get into games. So no, I think it's a good problem to have, especially. And you mentioned the versatility of this lineup, and that's something I will be looking forward to. And Pete DeBoer last year, especially for probably the first time in his tenure, switched a lot of things up, especially with the forward trios. He was not afraid to experiment, and I'm kind of looking forward to the experiment too. Not that I'm praying for the Stars to slump offensively, but if they do struggle at points, maybe we'll see Johnson, Stankoven, and Borg get all the young guys together, and we can start to really get like crazy about all the different combinations they can have, and that will certainly be fun, because there's just so many young guys you can throw together, and just kind of let them play. So Pete DeBoer is I'm sure he has sleepless nights, like thinking he's probably dreaming of different line charts and what's.
So let me ask you again, like, who's your pick? Like, we have the 12 guys up front that's gonna be there. Like, it's Colin Blackwell for sure. It's Sam Steele and Dadanov in fourth line. So who's your 13th guy? And maybe even 14, because this year they can have also 2 extra forwards, no problem.
Yeah, mine would be Hiru. I don't know, something about him. I think he can move. He skates pretty well. And I know they're pretty high on him. I like his offensive game, I guess I would say. I think he gives Dallas a little extra punch. That would be mine based off what I've seen from him. You can never have too many fins, so just add another fin to the lineup. That would be mine. That would be my gut feeling over back in Blumel. And I would probably have back as my 14th guy if they kept 2. Because I like, as much as I would love Bichsel, I don't know if they can keep Bichsel with the cap. I don't know if that's
they can
really an opportunity.
They can do either 13 forward and 8 D.
Yeah.
So they can definitely keep Bichsel even with 13 forwards. They can do 23-man roster, no problem. Thanks to the Harley extension. For me, it's a toss-up between, and I'm surprised even to say this, because I'm the Huru fanboy number one. Because I tweeted about it, like he's my guy, because when they signed him, he's basically a perfect mix of Radek Faksa and Ty Dellandrea for me. Like
Yeah, that's a good combination. Yeah.
Yeah, because he's right-handed, but also he's center. He's also a little bit bigger, and also like this ability to play forward, to play defense. He's basically the mix of those two. If those two had a baby, the Arturo is the baby of Radek Faksa.
Yeah.
But I was impressed with Kola Lind, I have to say. I'm surprised by saying this. And the one last thing that really counts to the equation is the waivers eligibility. So the only players who are waiver eligible and who are not waiver exempt, so you have to put them on waivers, are Oscar Beck and Kola Lind. You can put Matej Blumel, you can put Arturo down to minors without being afraid of losing them. You cannot do that with Kola Lind and the Oscar Beck. So that's really something I think Jim Neal will consider. And that's why I believe either one of those two, or maybe even both, will stay with Dallas for the opening night because they can afford it. So that's why I go with Beck or Lind. Depends on if they go 22 or 23.
Yeah, Lynn can play, and he had a big year in Coachella Valley in the AHL. He's going to be that guy that is almost too good for the AHL, I feel like, in a few years, but can he consistently play in the NHL? In this preseason, man, I mean, they put him on the power play. He facilitates pretty well. He's sort of been kind of in that bumper spot. Yeah, I think he's probably been the biggest surprise for a lot of fans out there, and I love his game too. I actually have sort of a weird connection. His sister played hockey at St. Cloud State, where I went to college. I was pretty good friends with her. That's her brother. And the Lynn family in general has really good hockey players. I'm pretty sure she has another brother that is going to play professionally one day. So I have a weird connection there. So I'll certainly ride his bandwagon. I will be his cheerleader. I want him to do well. So yeah, they got him in the offseason. I was like, oh, all right, yeah, and he was he killed it last year in the AHL. So we'll see if he makes the opening night roster, which would be really cool. So man, there's so much good stuff, so much positives out of this.
By the way, I was surprised that he was a Canadian. Like I knew his name. I think he was picked by Seattle in the expansion draft.
Correct,
wasn't he?
correct. He was.
Like yeah. So I always assumed he's Finnish because of the name, because the name sounds like so Swedish or Finnish, Scandinavian type of name. And then I realized he's a Canadian. So yeah, and he has a brother, Kalen Lind. Just doing this research on Elliot, and he's 19, and he plays for Red Deer Rebels in WHL, and he was drafted in second round by Nashville.
Yeah. I was about that makes sense because she was in Nashville for a draft. Yeah, I was about to say, yeah, no, they got some good bloodlines.
So we've done some pretty good digging on this episode, I can say.
Absolutely. Anything else, Juraj, or anything on the top of your mind you want fans to know? Is there something else? I feel like I don't got anything for you for the first time. I feel like I've ran out of stuff to ask you.
I mean, it's probably the good thing, right?
Yeah.
If we run out of things that we want to say, I'm good right now. Let's just keep this rolling, and I hope the listeners will like this episode. And go Stars! I'm looking forward to the season.
Absolutely. We'll have a longer Friday episode for the listeners, which is never a bad thing. We are now 6 days away when we're recording this from the Stars season opener against the Nashville Predators tonight. Tonight is the final preseason game as well against the St. Louis Blues. So we'll discuss that a bit as well. Or maybe I'll do that episode tomorrow and then save this for Monday. I don't know yet. We'll see. We'll see. We'll have to see. But you're right. Thank you so much again. Always appreciate it. Good luck wherever you are, man. You're everywhere nowadays. So every time we can catch up, it's good. I know our schedules are completely different, but I got up early today. Usually it's late for you, so I had to return the favor. I got up early, and never hesitate to ask me to come on again, and hopefully we can catch up maybe at some point during the year.
Absolutely. Thank you, Joey.
All righty, Stars fans, that'll do it on an episode of Locked On Stars. Thank you as always for the love and support, and we'll see you around. So long, everybody.